Welcome to GRE Snacks, snackable episodes about the GRE, GMAT, and graduate school admissions. I'm Tyler, the founder of Achievable, and we have an affordable GRE course that includes everything you need to ace your GRE. A full textbook, videos on key topics, tons of GRE questions backed by our memory enhancing algorithm, a built in study planner and essay grader, and full length practice exams. You can try it out for free by going to achievable.me, and if you like it, use the code podcast to save 10%. Now, let's get started. Today we've got Matt Roy with us, who actually authored our GRE course. Matt, I'd love if you could introduce yourself.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Roy. Like Tyler said, I'm the author of the GRE course for Achievable, and I've tutored now over 1,000 hours for GRE students since before COVID, a little bit before COVID. I used to tutor for Kaplan, and now I tutor independently on Leland and Wysant.
Yeah, great. So today we're going to be talking about the common mistakes that students make on
Mhm.
GRE and how to avoid those mistakes. So how do you normally kind of start this conversation off, or if you have like a list or top five or something like that, like what do you start this with?
Yeah. So when we say common mistakes in this conversation, I'm going to really be referring to careless mistakes. Okay.
Okay.
And they are the most common. That's why. A careless mistake, though, could be categorized in a few ways or could be described in a few ways when you're specifically talking about the GRE, meaning there are ways on the GRE where you can consistently make the same mistake, basically, just because the way the GRE is. Okay? And these mistakes have nothing to do with knowledge gap. That's kind of an important point. You could study
Hmm.
like for a million years and know everything you need to know in order to prepare for the GRE, but you could still make this mistake on test day. Okay.
Sure.
And essentially, like we'll go through like five situations where this can happen, and I notice it in myself too. So it's really important when you recognize these things to take note of it and remind yourself, like, I cannot do this on test day. Okay. And
Mhm.
they'll make more sense in a second. So the first one is just not double checking your answer once you've
Okay.
selected your answer. Yeah. So especially if it can be double checked. So if you can put back in your answer choice into like your equation in reverse order to verify that is true, definitely do it. Okay. This is something you can do like if you have more time as well. Like if you don't have that much time, then I wouldn't really call it a mistake. It's just something you can't do. But if you have the time, you should do it. And this is an important point. Every section is timed, and you cannot use the time remaining in any section on a later section. So
Right.
if you ever finish a section and you have like 1 or 2 minutes left and you hit the next button, that is a mistake. We need to use every second we have to at least just recheck some of the answer choices, especially the ones that we were less confident in.
Right. Well, and it sounds like, there's some problems where it's relatively trivial to check, right? Because if, let's say it's
Yeah.
like, what is the value of X, right? That means you probably have some equations that you can look it up
Mhm.
against or things like that. I'm curious, so I mean, another important thing about the GRE is that unlike the GMAT, the GRE, you can go back and look at any question
Yeah.
from the section.
Yeah.
And so you
And
can change
you
your answer.
Yes, you can, and actually, it's a feature of the GRE, like, you are allowed to flag questions so that once you finish the section, you get to see all of the questions, like, in order, and then the ones that you flagged have a little, like, flag symbol next to them, so that it's even more readily available for you, to, like, click on it and then jump to it as well.
Yeah. So would you recommend if people are going through like the first time
Mhm.
and they don't know how much time they're going to have left at the end, would you recommend them just plugging in the answer right away if it's going to be fast, or would you recommend that they just flag it and then come back to it later if they have time?
If it's going to be fast, I would do it,
Okay.
but especially in the first section, because it's fewer questions, you do have very little time. So it is important to recognize that, especially if you're taking a long time to answer each question. Sometimes just flag it and move back at the end. Always like you should move on if you're even 95% sure of an answer.
Mm.
because that last 5% could take a lot of extra time, especially if you did it for every question. But we need to at least attempt every question. So that's kind of the first priorities. At least attempt every
Yeah.
question. But yeah, it really depends. Like I said, the second section, you're more likely to have extra time in the end because there are more questions. And if you, on average, do slightly less than per question than like a minute and a half, then you're going to have more time in the end because there was more opportunities to get ahead.
Right.
But yeah, so let me move on to the next one. It's similar. A few questions, a few word questions in the GRE lend themselves to a specific strategy, and that is imagining your own values for the variables. And I'm not talking about quant comparison here. I'm talking about like a question that says like you're going like X miles per hour for Y miles, and then for Z miles you go W miles per hour. And then
Right.
there's some mix of all four variables in each of the answer choices. And the question might be like, how many miles did you go? Something like that.
Right.
You should just plug in your own answers, right? You should say,
Oh,
okay,
like plug in numbers, you mean?
yes, plug in numbers, and you just say, I'm going 10 miles, this many miles per hour, I'm going 20 miles at this many miles per hour, and then you plug it all in, and then the answer choice that would be correct would be equivalent to your imagined solution as well. But the problem is, especially if you plug in similar numbers, like 1, 1, and 1, and 1 for all three variables, it's likely all answer choices would be the same, or at least some of them. Like if every answer choice is just product or division, then it's 1 divided by 1 times 1, 1, 1, you know.
Right.
So in that case, you get what's called false positives. And the problem with that is a lot of people just select the first answer they see as right, and they don't keep going and don't recognize that there may be false positives.
Yeah, so like doing that a couple of times, like I would say two times, right? In the interest of time, you don't need to do it like 16 times, but like
Yeah.
two times if it's the same one and none of the others twice in a row, then you're probably good.
Oh yeah, if it's never one of the others and and the first time through, if you get just one answer and all the rest are provably false in that case, then you're fine. You don't need to go through again. And actually, another important point is if you have two positives the first time
Hmm.
through, you only check those two next until you've proven
Yeah.
one of those two false. So it's a lot less plugging in than it may seem.
Well, I
And you
think
can,
another thing also, sorry to cut you off. I feel like, paying attention to the context of the problem can help a lot. So like you just mentioned, you're traveling this many miles at this many miles per hour. It's I think that automatically rules out negative numbers because
yeah,
you can't travel negative miles or negative miles per hour, and it rules
you
out
could go
zero
backwards.
probably. I mean, you could go backwards, but
Yeah,
like I
it
think for the
depends on what
sake
class
of the
you're in, but
problem,
yeah,
yeah, I
that's a
feel
very
like
good
that might be helpful. Yeah.
That's a very good point, and it's also important to recognize plugging in unique numbers or what you can call smart numbers that are more likely to give you unique answers for each answer choice is important. So we would not double. We're not going to choose two ones, or we're not going to choose just all the same numbers. We're going to try to make every input unique so that all of the answer choices are very likely to be unique numbers so that we don't have
Yeah.
the problem with false positives. But anyway, the original point was we do need to check at least every answer choice once so that we don't accidentally get a false positive or choose a false positive.
Yeah.
I say this because
No,
I
no, it
made
makes
this.
sense.
Yeah.
So that's number two. What's your next one?
Yes. So this one happens to a lot of my students. Once you've read a question, you don't even look back at the question ever again. So a lot of times
Mhm.
people read a question, they put their head down, they start writing out all their variables and they try solving for something, and then they get to the end of their equation and then they see what's there and they're like they look up, they look at the answer choices, they see that it's there, they click it and move on. What I just described sounds like someone who correctly answered a question, but sometimes the very end of the question doesn't ask for what you just solved for. It asks for like 3x, 3 of what you just solved for. Or maybe you accidentally, you solved for the radius, but the question did ask for the diameter, but of course you had to get to the radius first to get to a diameter or something like that. So it's very
Right.
important when you're selecting your answer to just reread literally the last few words to ask yourself, am I clicking on the thing that it is asking or it is really asking for? And the reason is this is a test. There is going to be an answer choice that is that other answer that isn't actually what it's asking for.
Right.
Because,
Yeah. I mean, they're, you know, they're trying to trick you in a way, like
yeah,
not like maliciously maybe, but like those are the easiest ways for them to
yeah.
generate wrong answer choices. So,
And as a course author, I do that all the time. So
yeah.
purposefully making answer choices specifically if you misinterpreted the question. Yeah.
Yep.
So always
Yeah.
be careful rereading that last sentence.
Yeah, it's an important thing that they totally do it on the GRE, so
Mhm.
it's important to do that.
Yeah.
Um, great. Yeah, what's your next tip?
And the last one
Mhm.
is something we do, especially when we're stressed or we're low on time, and it is detrimental in a quant question. You can skim a little bit in verbal, but in math, like everything is relevant, and you can't really just skim and then not like get a precise answer. So, kind of a couple specifics here. They're very often in the GRE, like I said, everything is relevant. I don't really see extra information too much in a question. It does happen, but a lot of times, like, you should not be skipping things thinking like, "Oh, I'm not gonna need this piece of information or this data." Like, most things are relevant. Like, also, as someone who writes questions, I specifically write things in because I know it's needed to get to an answer. Like, if you think in
Mm.
terms of the person writing the question, like, they're writing it because you need it. The other thing, though, is and it's a lot easier to skim in this case, is the graphs. So a lot of people kind of just almost just glance at the graph and look at the question and then try to almost use the question to help discover what is going on in the graph. And that can be a huge mistake, especially if the graph includes a little note on the bottom or an asterisk. Anytime I've ever seen something like that in a graph question, it is relevant to answer one of the questions. They do not write a little note on the bottom unless it is completely necessary to interpret it correctly for one of the answer choices. So
Yeah.
we can't skim and ignore that as well.
Yeah, well, and I think it's also like think like the test writers, right? Like the
Mhm.
test writers, I mean, unless they're intentionally flooding you with extra information that is meant to lead you astray, which the GRE doesn't do, they are only including information if it's relevant, right? And I think that, yeah, like you said, it's easy to look at something and be like, ah, it's a footnote. Well, I
Mm.
mean, it's a footnote that they felt like they had to put in
Yeah.
because they tested this question
Yeah.
and some people were getting it wrong because of some nuance that the footnote explains. So it's actually probably one of the most important things in the question.
Yes, exactly. It will be the reason why one answer choice is the way or is what it is. I will say though, there is one case where information that is given is completely irrelevant, and that is with the quant comparison questions that are like what I call nonsense questions or misleading questions, where the answer is just D, meaning the relationship between quantity A and quantity B cannot be determined. And what they give is all just information that isn't enough to know anything about either. So
Right.
that is the only case where I could say that they give a lot of, or they give some information that is irrelevant.
Yeah. I mean, quantitative comparison questions are kind of
Yes, it
their
is.
own thing.
Mhm.
But that makes sense. Great.
Yep.
Well, thank you for sharing all these tips. Yeah.
That's
Anything
all.
else
Yep.
before we wrap up?
Just a little review for everyone. Yeah, the first one is double check your answer choices and use all of your time. The next one is plug into all the answer choices whenever you're imagining your own filler numbers, just to prevent from checking for false positives. The next one is make sure you reread the last part of the question before you actually select your answer. And then lastly, skimming is detrimental. It's a horrible habit in the quant section of the GRE.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been GRE Snacks, hosted by Tyler from Achievable with Matt Roy. And Achievable has a great online GRE course that you can try for free at achievable.me and use the code podcast to get 10% off.